It's that time once again, folks, to chat with Erika Brown of the Cricket for all things Manchester and Essex. How you doing, Erika?
Heather, Corey, how are you?
Great, great.
Good, good.
Okay, let's get off on a fascinating story in a conversation you had with Chuck Dam.
Yeah, this continues our theme of water this year, because we've talked about the historical stories in the last, edition of the Cricket, back to when we had our first municipal water supply and we learned what a standpipe was, which I did not know what it was. It's a water tower. And this week we actually, in all seriousness, we had a great, very substantive Q&A with Chuck Dam, Charles Dam. He's the head of the DPW for Manchester. And the reason why he's so good with water, and I really wanted to sit down and have a comprehensive sort of orientation about all things municipal water with him, is his background's in municipal water. It's all he did. He used to work for a consulting firm, an engineering firm that did nothing but municipal water systems and things like that. And then he came to Manchester, and he's the past president recently, because he's not an old guy, he's young, of the 13-member Massachusetts Water Works Association. So the Municipal Water Association for the state of Massachusetts. He was the president.
Is Chuck Dam a stage name?
I was going to say, he's got the right name for it. What else could he do?
Exactly. I didn't say that to him. I should have. Damn.
That, right?
Damn. Your name sounds like a water dam.
Yeah.
But
Dam. Yeah.
Exactly. So we actually talked all about sort of the fundamentals of the water, kind of a water system. And most people confuse, sort of drinking water versus wastewater. Manchester was in a sewer moratorium that just got lifted, and we're about to get out of a consent order in the next month or so. And so that we figured out what that was about, and how do things work. And we learned a lot of interesting things that I think people are really interested in now that they're looking at water. Manchester has a new water task force that it formed just this year. It's literally populating it with the volunteers now. It's going to operate for the next 12 to 18 months. And it's going to look at our water resources and see sort of what's happening with our water resources in light of climate change and in light of development. Those are the two things that they're going to be looking at. They're updating a report that was done back in 1990 called the Horsley-Witten report that literally would have cost a couple of $100,000 or, over $100,000 for sure if it were done today. And they've been given $25,000 to update it. So now's the time to talk water. Chuck is working with them, and we learned all about all sorts of interesting things.
So what is the sewer moratorium?
The sewer moratorium actually Manchester's been under several of them. I did a lot of research to find out what's going on with it, and I literally couldn't figure it out because Manchester was under a sewer moratorium pretty much on and off from 1992 or something like that.
So,
this one actually goes back to 2012. And it literally just got lifted at the end of the year by the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, which is, a really interesting department within our state, filled with highly qualified scientists, engineers, and public health officials. And they get reported to every month by all municipal water associations who do testing every single day. And they put a moratorium because Manchester's aging pipelines going into their wastewater treatment plant were aging and were cracking, and things were getting into it. Rainwater and stormwater was actually getting into those pipes and overloading the wastewater treatment plant. That's what it was. It wasn't about capacity, because some people are confused and think it's about we don't have enough capacity. That's not it. It's called inflow and infiltration. I think II is what it's called. And they've fixed it after many years. We spend about $1 million a year on our water infrastructure, replacing pipes. Quick thought. The average municipality, if they're doing things right, are replacing 2% of their water and sewer infrastructure per year. And that means in 50 years, you will have replaced 100% of your system. And that's good practice. So there you go.
Yeah.
So one other interesting thing that came up, and I'm going to ask you if you've ever heard this, because people are starting to, I love this way, with boards and stuff, people are trying to toss this word out as if it's always been around. And when I first heard it, I was like, I've never heard that before. Have you ever heard of PFAS? PFAS?
Well,
PFAS.
truthfully, you did tell us about it before we started this episode. So that was my second time hearing about
Okay.
PFAS.
Well, here's the thing. People are tossing around, well, our PFAS numbers are this. And I'm like, what is a PFAS? So here it is. PFAS stands for, and I got to read this. It stands for Per and Polyfluoroalkyl Substances. And it's a brand new Mass DEP testing standard that got implemented for all municipalities across the state last fall. So it's brand new, right? But it's very important. Now, PFAS is really about 6 chemicals. They're all man-made, and they're all toxic if you have too much of it. Obviously, that's why they're testing for it. And they're associated with firefighting foam. More than anything else, but they're also associated with things like Teflon and nonstick materials. Some of the interior linings of food packaging has PFAS chemicals in them. Fleece, some textiles, fleece. Better watch out, the nut and berry crowd.
The Patagonia people. So are we doing something to contain the amount of PFAS in the environment, or are we just looking at our water?
No, you have to, it's water. Water is really where the rubber meets the road, per se. That's where it counts. When it can be ingested, it becomes a health problem. Here's the number. The number is 20 parts per trillion. And if you go over that number, you have to do something. Now, Manchester has tested at around just approaching 19. So it's close, you think. But Chuck sort of demystified it for me, and he said that really, if you're talking about 20 parts per trillion, you're talking about 1 grain of salt within 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That is 20 parts per trillion. Yeah.
That trillion number is always tricky.
And by the way, here's another little fun fact on the side that this just tells you how I think. Do you know that the national EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, do you know what their standard is for PFAS? 70. It's more than triple in terms of your ability. So Massachusetts is very conservative.
Yeah.
So 20. Be happy you live in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, the DEP does a good job of keeping us all safe. We're not going to be poisoned. And so they've already got, by the way, Manchester is close enough to that standard. They've already got a consultant working on sort of mitigating things for the Lincoln Street well, because that really provides most of our water. So it was really interesting to talk to him about PFAS and all these other things. It was really, a really interesting thing. We're going to be doing water for the next 12 to 18 months. And I got to tell you, Manchester's pretty lucky to have somebody who's the ex-president of the Municipal Water Association for Massachusetts to be, a resource as the volunteers for this task force do their jobs, because it's a very technical job. I mean, it really is. So, so there you have it.
Yeah, Mr. Dam comes through again.
Damn, Chuck.
What else is in the paper this week, Erika?
Well, one thing that's kind of fun, I think, because it's kind of a kickoff. It's not like hard news, but it's got a kickoff, is the Chamber of Commerce. The Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, which now the Greater is in there because they merged with Ipswich last year. They're coming up on their 100th anniversary this year, and they're going to kick it off, the formal celebrations, next month for their annual kind of gala. But really, it kind of gives you a look back at sort of back in 1922, when it was the Gloucester Chamber of Commerce. Manchester, for the record, didn't join the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce until 1973, or we weren't invited.
Either way.
But yes, it started out in 1922 as a way of sort of really generating excitement about tourism to Cape Ann and Gloucester and Rockport and Essex. And they have some great pictures of a caravan. I don't know if I'm supposed to use that word today, but a caravan that the chamber took down in 1922 to Washington, D.C. to promote Gloucester and Cape Ann. And they promoted it as Cape Ann, as a lovely destination. And there's some really great pictures, some great pictures from Manchester businesses. My favorite, of course, is, do you know this? Great picture. Mike Costello and Captain Dusty, Bruce Lesane, the original Captain Dusty. And by the way, Captain Dusty, when Captain Dusty started Captain Dusty's, it was not an ice cream shop. It was a bait and it was actually a fish store and a bait store. I remember it at the time because it's right across from Masconomo Park, and it's right on the other end of the culvert for Jeffries Creek, the original kind of Jeffries Creek thing. So it's right by Morse Pier. And so, there's a reason I'm telling you this. I used to babysit for kids like, back in the day. And I used to tell the kids, the fish, Captain Dusty's, what they do is they fish in the store, and they have a hole in the floor that goes right into the water, and they can pull the fish right up and they sell it right there. And they believed me.
So did that Captain Dusty make the transition from fish to ice cream?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was sold, and Captain Dusty is a treasure, and he is an African American in 1930s. In the 1930s, he was a porter for a wealthy family who had a private caboose, railway car, right? Because that's how they traveled back in the day. Just like us. The rich, they're just like us.
Back and forth from Rockport to Manchester.
So they had their own private train car, and he was the porter for this family. And I think he was kind of what we would call laid off during the Depression back in the day. And he just remembered that he always loved Manchester, and he just got off in Manchester and he opened a shop.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Anyway, but we weren't talking about the chamber. Chamber's turning 100.
Well, it's just interesting that was formed in 1922, just before Gloucester's 300th anniversary, because I knew there was a big yellow blow up for that too. I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Well, also right after the pandemic, and there was that, and when did they build the bridge, the Piat Bridge? Was
later.
The later? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Piat was one of the founding members of the chamber. I saw Peter. I got the paperwork from the chamber, and I could see the signatures of the original incorporation. And when I was looking down, I noticed his name. He was number 2, and he was a congressman. Was he a congressman at the time?
He was a statesman. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he was a professor at Harvard. He was also an economics professor, but from Eastern Point, and there he was, a founding member of. And then I guess later they did the bridge and they named it after him.
Right. Yeah. We always learn something every week, Erika. Great job once again. Get the cricket, folks. You won't be disappointed. I get it. So does Heather. So Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
This episode of Cape Ann Today is brought to you by J&L Welding.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.